The
Most people
secret,
think wood ash was just
passed
an
down
old-fashioned way to add
generations,
potassium to the garden
is in the
because fertilizer
ash.
was expensive or
It
unavailable. But
nourishes
there's a
the
strange
soil
pattern older
after the
farmers
heaviest.
noticed decades ago. After heavy rain or a deep watering, they would scatter only a
As
very
the
thin
ash
layer of ash around
integrates,
certain plants.
a
And within a few
microscopic
days, the
change
soil surface would
begins.
dry more evenly,
The root
stems would feel
system
firmer, fungal problems would slow down, and weak plants often started recovering surprisingly fast. The strange part is that the amount of ash they used was far too small to function like a normal fertilizer. So something else was changing underground. Because when ash is used the wrong way, the exact opposite
Soil
happens.
chemistry.
Soil
The
can become
delicate
hard
root
within a couple
systems
of weeks.
become blocked,
Leaves start yellowing
unable to
even when
absorb the
nutrients are
vital
present,
minerals
and growth
trapped
suddenly
within the
stalls
hardened
because the roots can
layers.
no
The
longer
ash
absorb minerals
feeds
properly.
the soil.
And that's the part most modern gardeners completely misunderstand. Because the way people use wood ash today is almost the exact
It is
opposite
an
of how
old
ancient
way.
farmers originally used it. One of the biggest mistakes modern gardeners make is assuming ash works slowly, like compost. It doesn't. In some soils, wood ash can start changing root conditions within 24 to 48 hours, especially after watering. That's why older growers were extremely careful with quantity, even when they had unlimited ash available all winter long. They understood something most people never notice today. Plants don't respond only to nutrients. They respond to chemical balance around the roots. You can actually see this happen if you watch closely after rain. In areas where a light dusting of ash was applied properly, the soil surface often stays loose instead of forming a dark, sticky crust. Stem bases dry faster in the morning. Some fungal smells weaken within days. Slugs sometimes avoid the area entirely. But when too much ash is dumped in one spot, the opposite pattern appears almost immediately. The soil surface hardens. Young leaves become pale. Growth slows down even though the plant technically has access to nutrients. And this is where most gardening advice becomes dangerously oversimplified. People hear that ash contains calcium and potassium, so they treat it like a free fertilizer and start mixing cups of it directly into the soil. But ancient farmers rarely buried ash deeply. In many cases, they barely mixed it in at all, because what they were trying to influence wasn't just nutrition. It was moisture movement, microbial activity, and root behavior near the soil surface. And once you understand that part, a lot of old farming practices suddenly start making much more sense. Most people think plants absorb ash directly as food. But that's not really what older farmers were observing. What they noticed was that the environment around the roots changed first, and the plant response came afterward. Wood ash is unusually reactive because a large portion of its minerals dissolve very quickly once moisture hits the soil. Potassium becomes available fast. Calcium starts affecting soil structure near the surface. And in wet conditions, the pH around root zones can shift enough to change which microbes dominate that area within just a few days. That shift creates patterns you can actually see without testing anything. Wet soil starts drying more evenly instead of staying muddy underneath. Stem bases remain firmer overnight. Certain fungal problems slow down near the surface first before the leaves improve. In some gardens, fungus gnats almost disappear after a light ash application because the top layer no longer stays constantly damp. But here's the important part most people miss. Ancient farmers were not trying to make the soil alkaline everywhere. They were creating temporary microzones near the surface where moisture behaved differently. That's why they often used ash after rain, not before. Moisture carried small amounts of soluble minerals downward gradually instead of concentrating them directly against the roots. And once you understand that mechanism, another old farming habit suddenly stops looking superstitious. Because many traditional growers never spread ash evenly across the entire bed. They applied it in thin rings, small strips, or isolated patches around mature plants only. At first glance, that seems inconsistent. But biologically, it changes everything. Most modern gardeners take ash and immediately mix it deep into the soil because that feels more complete. But older growers often did the exact opposite. They left it near the surface. And the placement was extremely specific. Don't mix ash deep into the soil. Scatter a thin ring around the outer root zone after watering. Leave it on the surface. That simple detail changes how the minerals move entirely. When ash stays near the top layer, moisture slowly pulls small amounts of potassium and calcium downward over time instead of dumping concentrated alkalinity directly against the roots. The root core stays stable while the outer zone changes gradually. This is why traditional growers often applied very small amounts repeatedly instead of one large application at the beginning of the season. They understood that roots behave differently near the soil surface than they do deeper underground. The fine feeder roots responsible for water and mineral absorption are highly sensitive to sudden chemical shifts. Too much ash buried near them can temporarily block iron and magnesium uptake within days. You can usually see the difference visually. Gardens where ash is overmixed often develop a pale gray crust after watering, especially in compacted soil. But when ash is used lightly on the surface, the soil tends to stay more granular and breathable. Stem bases dry faster after rain. Some plants stand more upright by the end of the week because potassium helps regulate internal water pressure inside plant cells. And there's another strange detail older farmers noticed long before modern soil science explained it. In damp conditions, surface ash sometimes reduced slug activity around vulnerable plants. Not because ash magically kills pests, but because the upper moisture layer changes enough to make certain conditions less favorable. Again, the effect wasn't coming from feeding the plant directly. It was coming from changing the environment surrounding the plant. One reason modern gardeners get inconsistent results with wood ash is because they focus almost entirely on how much to use, while older farmers paid far more attention to when they used it. Ash behaves very differently in dry soil than it does in moist soil. If you spread ash across dry ground in the middle of a hot afternoon, a large portion stays concentrated near the surface. Wind carries the fine particles away, watering becomes uneven, and after a few cycles, the top layer can start sealing into a hard crust. That's when people begin seeing yellow leaves and stalled growth, even though the soil technically contains minerals. But after rain, the same ash behaves differently almost immediately. Moisture dissolves the most soluble compounds first, especially potassium salts. Instead of sitting in one harsh alkaline layer, the minerals begin moving gradually downward with water flow. The concentration around root hairs stays lower, which means the plant can respond without going into stress. That's why many traditional growers waited until the ground was already wet before applying ash. In some regions, they even timed it around morning dew or light drizzle instead of heavy sunlight. They weren't following superstition. They were observing mineral movement in real time, even if they didn't describe it scientifically. You can often test this yourself in less than a week. Apply ash lightly on damp soil around one mature tomato plant, then leave another untreated. Within several days, the treated area often dries more evenly after watering, and the stem may feel noticeably firmer near the base. Not because the plant suddenly received more food, but because potassium directly influences water regulation inside plant tissue. And this is exactly why certain crops responded far better to ash than others. Some plants benefit quickly from that mineral balance shift. Others react badly almost immediately. Ancient farmers learned that difference through observation long before soil testing existed. One pattern older farmers noticed repeatedly was that certain crops seemed to wake up after ash was applied, while others became weaker very quickly. And the difference had almost nothing to do with whether the plant was considered strong or fragile. It came down to mineral demand. Plants like tomatoes, onions, garlic, beans, and cabbage usually respond well to small amounts of properly applied wood ash because they use large amounts of potassium during rapid growth and fruit development. Potassium controls water movement inside plant cells. It affects stem pressure, leaf rigidity, flowering strength, and even how evenly fruit develops. That's why tomato plants treated correctly with ash sometimes develop thicker stems and firmer leaves within days, especially during wet weather when roots struggle to regulate moisture efficiently. Older growers often interpreted this as the plant becoming stronger, but biologically, the plant was managing internal water pressure more effectively. But acid-loving plants react very differently. Blueberries are one of the best examples. Many gardeners unknowingly damage them with ash because blueberries rely on acidic soil conditions to absorb iron properly. Once the pH rises too much, the leaves begin yellowing between the veins, even when iron is physically present in the soil. The roots simply can't access it efficiently anymore. Potatoes can also become problematic under excessive ash use, especially if the soil already contains high calcium levels. In some cases, rough or scabby skin becomes more common because the surface chemistry surrounding the tubers changes. And this is why ancient growers rarely treated every crop the same way. They weren't blindly spreading ash everywhere. Over generations, they learned which plants visibly improved, which plants tolerated it, and which plants quietly declined afterward. Modern gardening advice often reduces ash to a simple, natural fertilizer, but traditional growers treated it more like a targeted adjustment tool. And when you start viewing it that way, another common modern mistake becomes very obvious. The biggest danger with wood ash is usually not immediate damage. It's accumulation. A single light application often does very little harm. In fact, many gardens improve temporarily after small amounts are added correctly. That short-term improvement is exactly what tricks people into overusing it. They see stronger stems or faster drying soil once, so they start applying ash every few weeks like compost. That's when the deeper problems begin. Over time, repeated ash applications can push soil chemistry too far in one direction. The surface becomes dense and pale instead of dark and crumbly. Water stops soaking in evenly. Earthworm activity near the top layer often decreases. And one of the clearest signs starts appearing in the leaves themselves. Young leaves become light green or yellow between the veins, even though fertilizer is still present. Most gardeners assume this means the plant needs more nutrients. So they add more compost, more fertilizer, or liquid feed. But in many cases, the nutrients are already there. The roots simply can't absorb them efficiently anymore because the pH has shifted too high. Iron and manganese become especially difficult for plants to access under excessive alkalinity. That's why overusing ash can create deficiency symptoms even in nutrient-rich soil. Older farmers understood this risk surprisingly well through observation alone. In many traditional systems, ash was not applied continuously year-round. There were pauses, entire seasons where no ash was added at all. Some growers only used it after long wet periods when fungal pressure increased or when certain heavy-feeding crops needed additional potassium support. And there's another detail modern gardeners often overlook. Ancient ash was usually produced from untreated wood, crop residue, or clean natural fuel. Today, many fireplaces and fire pits burn painted wood, processed lumber, cardboard with chemical inks, or compressed materials containing additives. The ash may look identical, but chemically it can behave very differently in soil, which explains why some gardens decline slowly for months without the gardener ever realizing the source of the problem. One of the fastest ways to damage a garden with wood ash is copying simplified advice without understanding the original context. Because there are several things older farmers almost never did, even though modern gardening tutorials recommend them constantly. They rarely dumped thick piles of ash around plants. They rarely applied ash directly against stems, and they almost never used it heavily around seedlings. Young roots are extremely sensitive to sudden chemical shifts. A mature tomato plant may tolerate a small surface application with very little stress, but a newly sprouted seedling can react completely differently. The root hairs responsible for early nutrient absorption are thin, delicate, and highly vulnerable to alkalinity spikes. That's why seedlings exposed to excessive ash often show very specific symptoms within days. Germination slows down. Tiny leaves become pale or twisted. The soil surface develops a dry gray crust after watering. In severe cases, the roots stop expanding outward entirely because the surrounding chemistry becomes too aggressive. Another mistake modern gardeners make is mixing large amounts of ash directly into compost piles. Small amounts can be harmless, but heavy ash concentrations can interfere with microbial decomposition by pushing the environment too alkaline too quickly. Instead of rich dark compost, the pile may become dry, dusty, and biologically less active. And perhaps the most important detail of all is frequency. Ancient farmers treated ash as an occasional correction, not a constant input. That difference changes everything. Modern gardening culture often encourages continuous feeding schedules, weekly fertilizers, constant supplements, endless amendments. But traditional growers paid closer attention to plant response patterns. If the stems strengthened and the soil stabilized, they stopped. They didn't keep adding more simply because the first application worked, which leads to a much bigger realization hidden underneath all of this. The real value of many traditional farming methods was never the material itself. It was the observation system behind it. A lot of old farming methods sound primitive until you look closely at what they were actually responding to. Ancient growers didn't have soil laboratories, nutrient charts, or pH meters, but they watched patterns constantly. They noticed which soils stayed wet too long after rain, which plants collapsed during humid weather, which areas hardened after repeated watering, which crops suddenly produced stronger stems after certain minerals were added in tiny amounts. Modern soil science now explains many of those observations very clearly. Calcium affects cell wall strength. Potassium regulates water pressure inside plant tissue. Surface mineral balance changes microbial activity near the root zone. Excess alkalinity blocks iron uptake. None of this is superstition anymore. The biology is measurable. But traditional growers understood something else modern gardening sometimes forgets. More input is not always better. A huge amount of modern gardening advice is built around adding more. More fertilizer, more feeding schedules, more amendments, more products. But many older systems were based on correction rather than constant stimulation. They interfered less. They observed longer. And when conditions stabilized, they stopped adjusting. That's why wood ash was usually applied in small amounts, at very specific times, around very specific plants. Not because ancient farmers lacked resources, but because they had already seen what happened when the balance went too far. And maybe that's the most important lesson hidden inside all of this. The ash itself was never the real secret. The real secret was understanding that healthy soil is not controlled by force. It's controlled by balance, timing, moisture movement, and the invisible relationships happening around the roots every single day. Most POP, ancient farmers treated. They used it like a precision adjustment tool, a small amount, at the right time, near the right plants, usually after moisture was already present. That's why the same material that helps one garden recover can slowly damage another when overused. The difference is rarely the ash itself. The difference is how concentrated it becomes, where it's placed, and whether the soil biology can stay balanced afterward. And once you start looking at old farming practices through that lens, a lot of strange, traditional methods stop looking primitive. They start looking observational, because many of those growers were not following random habits. They were responding to patterns they had seen repeated for generations.